Thank you, China, and hello, India. Before we dive in, remember, this is the Clarity Podcast. Spread clarity by sharing this with your friends. This is the most exclusive knowledge, and your friends will only thank you for it. Spreading clarity will take everyone forward and won't cost you any money. Let me be clear right up front. Why am I thanking China? The recent massive plunge in Chinese stocks has created a huge appeal and potential for the rival economy that is India. There has been global chatter about how India is the next China. Mark Mobius, the veteran investor, is giving more attention to India compared to China. And now I am going to drop in a big one. So pause and make note. The world is getting ready for a recession. The big R, as they say. While a lot of people are saying this is the time that it is going to be very different this time around. It is not going to be like the recessions that were earlier. The RBI in India has already taken note. Our Foreign Affairs Minister has strategically and tactically pointed out how rising oil prices are hurting and breaking our back. But India has an expanding domestic market. We are one of the largest consumer markets in the world. We are well prepared to weather this recession than anybody else out there. Also, China's spar with the US is leading to the US warming up to India. Do they really have a choice? Tell me in comments. And when you double click on this, you realize that Apple is not just placing a mere bet on India by shifting their manufacturing of iPhone 14 here, but they are actually not sure of the supply chain risks that are there in China. One big factor also is the lockdowns in China. Even when the world is opening up post-COVID, we've actually seen several parts of China still in massive, major, very strict lockdowns. By the way, you are listening to this podcast at the very right time. Because this shift from China to India has just begun. It's in its infancy. More funds will find India more attractive in the coming few months and years. In another episode of the Clarity Podcast, I will go deep into a massive change that's happening in India. A change that a very few people even understand, let alone realize and take action about it. Why Facebook invested in Jio and why that was the right time when they did it. How is it going to impact small businesses? We will keep it for another episode. Let's now go deeper in this episode. Let me set the record straight. India is not the next China. Let me say it again. India is not the next China. India is India. We are extremely differently placed in time. Our history is extremely different, and the massive cultural and economic shift we are experiencing now, this is probably a once-a-lifetime opportunity. Because the India after the decade will be a very different India. Let's now go back in time, because you're able to gain clarity about anything in life only when you connect the dots looking backwards. Exactly like Steve Jobs said. Year 2000 is when it began. The global narrative about India was changing, but COVID changed it further. India supplied covaxin to the world. India helped the world. India's position not just in healthcare but in manufacturing and technology has only strengthened further. China misread India. You know, the lion has started roaring again. But China did not realize it. Some of you listeners might find me very naive in creating a boastful narrative of India. But hey, listen in. I understand that China still has a massive advantage in terms of the electric future that we are all looking at. Most of the materials that are required, the salts that are required to create an electric a vehicle battery, most of that really comes from China. Replicating China's manufacturing ability will not be a walk in the park. But one thing that the world does not recognize about India as much is that we are extremely resilient. And for the first time in our history, we are experiencing our raw power, thanks to the government and our Pradhan Sevak, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's now take a pause. because this is a game-changing moment in this episode of the Clarity Podcast. To understand India, you must know that we are extremely resilient and we are experiencing raw power. I have repeated these lines on purpose. Okay, now that you have gulped it in, now I will give you the 3 key actionable points that can translate this podcast into money making or growth opportunities for you. Number 1, invest in India. Especially find some great value creating companies and fund them. While most might advise against small caps, there are some interesting opportunities. Number 2, invest in infrastructure. The current Indian government has a major push on the Indian infrastructure, from roads to buildings to so much more. In fact, the BJP has always only made India progress, at least definitely in terms of the infrastructure. Number 3, invest in technology around agriculture, health, and banking. One of the greatest shifts in India has been the adoption of digital banking. Our UPI is light years ahead of the banking ecosystem of many other so-called developed countries. Let me give you another point. Point number 4. Keenly follow the public policy being drafted in India at this moment. India realizes that the next decade is ours and this is our greatest opportunity in the world. Public policy is taking shape for the new India. If you can somehow take part in shaping the policies of the future, do that. And now, the biggest opportunity of this decade in India. That is, teach India. Let me repeat that for you. Teach India. A large part of India resides in tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cities. These are emerging cities. These are small towns and villages. The youth in these cities need hand-holding and direction in vernacular languages. The national education policy will take another 3 to 5 years to actually come into practical effect and make a dent. This is the time to handhold and teach India's youth in small towns and cities. This youth has the power to shape or derail India. Let me tell you, I am already doing it. This is not just theory or just words. I am actually doing it as an entrepreneur with my venture that I call MBA Plus. I actually teach a lot of young people in India, the youth across tier 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 villages, towns and cities. I teach them in Hindi. I teach them about business, about technology and world news. And they actually love that content because it literally just opens their eyes to a different world altogether that they are not privy to. Let me tell you, this is going to be the defining moment in the history of education in India. And in the next 10 years, some of us will make not just billion-dollar companies, but multi-billion-dollar companies. Okay, I know that's a lot. Rate this episode of the Clarity Podcast on Spotify, leave comments on YouTube, on Amazon Music, Google Podcast, or wherever that you are listening in from. Spread clarity by sharing this podcast with your friends. I promise you, it won't cost you a dime. I will be with you in the next episode. Stay healthy, stay safe. More clarity to you.